We all see the consequences for people living in Israel and in Gaza every day in video. But for many of the rest of us, particularly in the business world, the consequences may be determined by whether or not this conflict spreads beyond Israel and Hamas. What are the factors, from your point of view, that will determine whether it does spread?
Well, listen, David, first I appreciate you having me. This is the question, because ultimately one of the things that the president has been very clear about, regardless if you love him or hate him, the reality is he's been very clear to the Iranians, because the Iranian proxies, we're really talking about Hezbollah in particular, as he likes to say, superpowers don't bluff. And it's also helped that they moved some very large ships into the Mediterranean. Every day, this White House is working to put pressure on those proxies, those in Lebanon and, yes, in Syria, but more really the Iranians. Don't do it. Don't do it, because a two-front war, without question, will have enormous consequences to the state of Israel, and, to be clear, will have enormous consequences to Lebanon and Iran. So I think when they're sitting around thinking about this in Tehran, I think they're thinking long and hard about what the consequences could be of them getting involved. But it certainly is a risk.
So, Tom, we see, for example, Secretary of State Blinken going to the region. We see various activities. I'm sure 9/10 of what's going on we never see, and we're not meant to see. Without revealing anything you shouldn't reveal that's confidential, what sorts of things do you expect is going on behind the scenes?
Well, first of all, they're pushing the Israelis very strongly about getting humanitarian aid into Gaza. Listen, Hamas is doing exactly what they want to do. They want to create unbelievable carnage in Israel, which they certainly did. They then really, as you know, don't really care about the Palestinian people. They're using them as human shields. Hamas isn't sitting around and says, let's come up with a two-state solution. No, Hamas is like ISIS, and their goal is to destroy the state of Israel. On the other hand, the vast, vast majority of Palestinians just want to live in peace and prosperity and freedom. We're not at a war with the Palestinian people, quite the opposite. We're at war with Hamas. And so I think what the president and Secretary Blinken is trying to do is relieve this humanitarian suffering that's going on in Gaza. It's terrible. I was on the phone with a very close friend of mine just this morning who has a very large business in the West Bank and has many, many, many people in Gaza with his operations there. It's heartbreaking. So I don't like any of this, to say the least. We should keep focused on how we got here. But at the end of the day, what you're hearing, what you're not hearing is the pressure that Secretary Blinken and the president and the vice president is putting on not only the Egyptians and the Qataris and all the people that get this humanitarian aid, and also to make sure that Israelis are making smart military decisions, and I think that's very important as well.
You mentioned Qatar, you mentioned Egypt, one other, Saudi Arabia, that could play a very significant role here. What do you expect is going on in Saudi Arabia? We thought we might have been on the brink, actually, of a peace agreement between Saudi Arabia and Israel. That certainly has been put off for the time being.
Well, David, as you know, I've spoken about this. I've been a very strong advocate of getting a deal done with Saudi Arabia. A normalized deal with Saudi Arabia and the state of Israel and with security agreements with the United States would only be better for the region, just like the Abraham Accords were. If you look at the Abraham Accords that were obviously done on the Trump administration, I praised them all the time when I was in the region. The idea of Bahrain and Morocco and the UAE was a game changer for the region. And this situation would be even worse if it wasn't the case. Now, how grand would it be today if we had a normalization with Saudi Arabia and Israel? Because ultimately, that makes the region more secure. So I'm actually quite confident after this is over, and God knows how long it will be, that the Saudis will, in fact, want to reengage, because quite frankly, they see the same threat that we see and Israel sees, which is the Iranian threat. They've seen part of it through the Houthis and Yemen. So my view of this is that with the work of MBS, with the work of the White House and the Israelis, my hope is, and I think strongly believe, that this chance of a Saudi normalization is certainly not dead. It is delayed, yes, but certainly not dead. And arguably, the imperativeness of this is even more great than it ever was.
So MBS, the Crown Prince, has really been intent on doing this for economic reasons, I think, in large part, because of the possible potential of an integration economically between Israel and Saudi Arabia. What about the attitude from Israel's point of view? I mean, after we get through this, and we hope we will get through this without some conflagration, after we get through it, will the Israeli position be altered in its dealings with Saudi Arabia, and for that matter, with the Palestinian people, as you say, not Hamas, but the Palestinian people?
I think there's going to be, listen, again, not quoting Winston Churchill, but I'm quoting my friend Rahm Emanuel, who is now the ambassador in Japan. Don't let any good crisis go to waste. Out of this, and it's so painful for every Israeli and innocent Palestinian. But out of this, let us not let this go to waste. Let's try to figure out how we make, let's push forward on the possibility of a two-state solution. Let's push forward on the idea of Saudi normalization to a more integrated Middle East. So my hope is that through this crisis, both the Israeli public and the international community will understand why it is so important and be able to push that to hopefully a conclusion. Is it going to be easy? No, of course it's not going to be easy. But nothing that's worth it is easy. And I think ultimately they're going to have to get the parties in a room together and say, okay, what's next?